Happy Thursday and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And here we go with episode 94.
Wow.
That's out of 109 episodes. What does that mean? We've got
15 minutes left. Yeah.
15 episodes to go.
Ugh.
Man, we're gonna have to start over with the half minutes.
So. Yeah, definitely.
There's so many more stories to tell and to unearth.
We don't have time to get all the people who want to be on our show.
Right.
We'll get them in somehow. Maybe we'll have a big party toward the end.
Yeah, special post-credit sequences.
Yeah, and we're already saying goodbye. Here's one of my favorite characters. We're saying goodbye to Eddie Valentine. Paul Sorvino gives his signature line for the entire movie, or the second half of his signature line here, saying, "Go get 'em, kid."
Right, that wonderful line we hear at the end of during the outro, at the end of every episode of the podcast, and it's such a great moment because it's the bookend to Eddie Valentine's little arc here. We've seen him. I may not be an honest criminal, but I'm 100% American. We just saw him side by side with an FBI agent, giving the sideways glance and then still gunning down the Nazis. And now he's 100% rooting for the good guy.
Yeah, and it wasn't 10 minutes ago in this movie that he was shooting at him inside of his nightclub. So,
hey, we all have our little misunderstandings.
Yeah. These things happen, and he's had a bad day. He's had a Nazi poke a sword in the bottom of his chin, and
right.
Gosh, he just needs a good quiet lay down. And he's got that
stripped
ulcer
him
plug.
of his boutonniere.
Yeah,
let's not forget that.
Gosh,
so all the damage to the South Seas Club, I think, as you were saying.
So he's got a date with another bromo, I think.
Yes, exactly. He's going to finish off tonight with a bromo. That would really be interesting. What a terrible movie it would be if we just cut from here and then followed Eddie Valentine home, and he put his feet up and he had a bromo and maybe read the paper. Yeah, check to see how the horses did that day.
Yeah, down there on the racing form.
Exactly. And then went to bed in the end of the movie. We have no idea what happens with the rest of it. That's why I don't make movies, Jim, because I have terrible ideas.
Well, I just keep wondering if Fitch and Woolley are going to walk over and go, "Hey, Valentine, we have a couple of questions for you, mugs."
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the RICO statutes had been introduced yet by this point, had they?
Well, I mean, it was Elliot Ness and the Untouchables were already they're deep into they were deep into it by now. They'd already gotten Capone.
Yeah, that's right. They would have already gotten Capone by this time, so they're already. So maybe there's somebody from the IRS who wants to see Eddie Valentine's taxes.
Alcatraz is going to be your next home.
Yes, exactly.
We say goodbye to poor Eddie as we watch the Rocketeer zooming in on that gigantic swastika and that giant guy wire and one of the three control axes of the axis.
The
Zeppelin.
axes of the axis. Oh,
yes.
Very well done.
Wow.
Yeah, he lands on that cable, which is kind of interesting. So I'm playing this back sort of quickly. Yes, he lands on the cable that's connected to what we would call a control horn, a little, what I would technically term a sticky outy bit that gives the cables a little bit of extra leverage to swing that rudder back and forth.
Okay, so it doesn't start slapping against the tail.
Right, you wouldn't want that grating. So it does two things. It keeps the cable free, but also, as I said, it gives you a little bit of leverage as it goes around the corner there. Which your wife, as she's diving back into trigonometry, not to go inside baseball on us, but she can tell us all about the triangular shape.
I am not bringing up cosines with her at this point. She is in no mood. So
I understand that. So Cliff hits that cable, and then we see some of the fabric tearing away, and we see that Duralumin, super lightweight aluminum. If I remember, it was aluminum and magnesium, but it was aluminum alloy structure underneath the rudder.
Yeah,
that fabric would have been cotton at this point.
Now, would cotton hold like a 180-pound guy? Maybe he's walking along like it doesn't say whatever nicked step or what no step would be on
right
Zeppelin, but he looks like he's trying along the spine, I guess.
Right, he'd be walking kind of along on an airplane we'd call it a longeron, so I would assume we might use the same term there, and that would just be a long just a long sort of beam type structure with the skin stretched over it. You're not supposed to step on that part of the wing of a fabric covered airplane, which would use the same basic thing. And this is a cotton fabric that's infused with a butyrate dope. And now, even when we restore an older airplane, it's very, very rare to still use cotton. We use a synthetic material called seconite or something similar that lasts longer and tends to hold up better. But you're not supposed to go stepping on it, but that cotton is surprisingly strong. And when it's stretched and then tightened with the dope, combined with that structure underneath, it's extremely light, but it's extremely strong. And you could walk on it a little bit. You wouldn't just sort of fall straight through immediately.
I used to build planes and use the dope and stuff like that. And I guess it's the same. It's the very same stuff. It's just a thicker material that you use on the full-size ships.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, it does have remarkable resiliency once that dope dries on it. It's kind of almost like a fiberglass.
Right. And I'd almost be surprised if the rudder here, and we're talking about the Zeppelin here with, you mentioned the 3 axes of control. The Zeppelin sort of has 2.5. It's got 2 different control surfaces. It's got a rudder up and down, and then elevator. So rudder for yaw, left and right for the nose, then rudder. Then elevator for pitch, for up and down with the nose. It doesn't really, an airship like this wouldn't really have roll control like we would with ailerons in an airplane, but you would have differential thrust. You've got those 4 Maybach 1200 horsepower V16 engines on either side, so you could use rudder and then some left rudder, then add a bunch of power on the left side, turn very tight, things like that. You don't really roll it left and right, which feels a little bit weird to a fixed wing pilot at first. Now, the new Goodyear airships, the Goodyear Zeppelins, because they have that vectored thrust, you actually can bank the airship a little bit. Although for the people in the gondola, it's a strange. It's not necessarily the most comfortable sensation. It's actually more comfortable to just sort of stay level and make your turns very, very flat and very gentle.
Just leave the gondola a plumb with the ground. So
right, exactly. And what's interesting to me about that is that if you and I were to go get up in an airplane, if we were to fly to the airplane like that and keep the wings completely level but just skid through our turns with just rudder, you'd be very uncomfortable. You get very much of a sense of centrifugal force sort of pushing you to the outside of the turn. It's just the airplane's uncoordinated at that state, and it's hard to describe beyond saying it's actually just an uncomfortable sensation. The airplane will tell you when it's coordinated. And that's a little bit of aileron for bank, a little bit of rudder, and a little bit of elevator to sort of bring you through a turn. So actually tipping the airplane feels more natural. But in the Zeppelin, especially at these much, much slower speeds, we're talking 25 to maybe 70, 80 miles an hour or something like that. At those slower speeds, it feels more natural to just sort of stay flat and level. I'm
still kind of floored by the idea of an 80-mile-an-hour Zeppelin. That's
that's pretty intense. That would be very, very much at the, very, very much at the high end.
But definitely keeping it at, I keep thinking in terms of space station terms, you're keeping the gondola along the R bar, the line between you and the center of the Earth. That's generally where you're trying to keep that. So one of the things that I know is a frequent misconception about Zeppelins, unlike balloons and things like that, the Zeppelin doesn't vent its buoyant, it's like it's hydrogen, or in blimp cases helium. It doesn't vent that to go up and down. That's what you're trying for is neutral buoyancy, that you're trying to make everything weigh zero, and then everything, the up, the down, the left and right, is all controlled by motors. Otherwise, you're just kind of parked there.
Yeah, exactly. And in particular, sort of, the latest of the Zeppelins, the Zeppelin NT, or new technology, like what Goodyear is operating now, you are looking for that primarily neutral buoyancy, or even a little bit of positive weight. Certainly when I had the chance to fly, when we launched up from the ground, it felt like a rocket ship, frankly. We pitched, way, way up and just cruised up out of there. Instead of being officially lighter than air, the airship weighed about 800 pounds. Now, for something that's 264 feet long or so, compared to about 800 for the Hindenburg and Graf Zeppelin and the fictional Luxembourg that we see here. It's very, very, it's considerably smaller, but it still feels huge. But you're absolutely right. So we would use, in that case, you've got rotating engine nacelles, and so those get tipped up. It becomes a tilt rotor like a V12 B-22 Osprey or something like that in a small way. So you use that to get up and out of there. And then it's a bit of it's thrust and forward speed. It becomes a little bit like an airplane. The shape of the envelope, the shape of the skin becomes a little bit of an airfoil, provides its own lift. And then those big control surfaces on the back, the rudder and elevator we talked about, function as they would on an airplane, provide the steering with the ability to augment that with differential thrust. The Luxembourg here has the 2 engines on each side and could differential stuff. The newer Zeppelins will have 2 engines up front and then a third engine in the back that can go that can rotate and actually go completely side to side, almost like a tail rotor on a helicopter.
What kind of engines are in those cars? What they call the cars out there? How big is that engine?
In the on the Luxembourg here in the film,
which we're assuming is the Hindenburg. It's basically
right.
The same
It's
thing.
Based on it would be the Hindenburg class. Now the real LZ-130 was the Graf Zeppelin II, and this one is marked as LZ-130. So I think we're safe in saying that this is a slightly alternate universe where instead of building the Graf Zeppelin II, we built the Luxembourg. So those engines are they're liquid cooled V16s. It's just a big, magnificent thing. They're Daimler Benz, and they're 1,200 horsepower each. And there's a total of 4 of them, 2 on each side.
So a real locomotive going off.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though they don't have the rudder control, they do have pretty good pitch control. We're watching them climb up in that beautiful panoramic view of Griffith Park with the 2 spotlights swinging away.
Oh, it's just gorgeous. Yeah, the spotlights down there, those wonderful searchlights, and then looking down at the LA basin. You see those 3 big prominent roads back there. Actually, that's maybe a little bit later, right? So when we see the Rocketeer starting to slide back a bit.
Yeah, he's looking back there over the 3 major streets there, familiar to anybody in Los Angeles of... let's see, from the north would be, or to the right-hand side, that would be Sunset Boulevard, Santa Monica Boulevard, and Melrose. So Santa Monica Boulevard, also known as, by that part of Santa Monica Boulevard, would be Route 66, which ends right at the Santa Monica Pier there, the Pacific Ocean.
The classic Route 66.
Very, very familiar sight of a very, very Los Angeles-y looking picture. So they're generally heading east over, East Los Angeles. They're heading toward downtown, actually. They're kind of sliding a little bit east and south, so they're heading down toward downtown, Chinatown, out that way. And we jump back into the gondola as the pilot's noticing that he's having problems with his wheel.
Right.
Is that would they really have a wheel like that, to turn left and right?
That would be totally appropriate. I mean, we're borrowing a lot, sort of a nautical theme here, and you'd have a big ship's wheel like that. And this was an airship, and they use those terms very, very specifically, I think, because of that. The Goodyear blimps, now by the time that I got to fly the Zeppelin NT, it was all glass cockpit and side stick control. But in the Goodyear blimps, you had, instead of a ship's wheel like that, you had a wheel that was almost that big, but it was mounted sort of sideways. It would be sort of alongside your leg, and you would roll it forward and back for up and down. And then you had traditional rudder pedals for rudder, and then just sort of nothing really in the center to do with your hands.
Yeah.
But in the German Zeppelins like this, very appropriate to have the wheel like that. What I do question, though, is I wouldn't see it sort of getting stuck like that. You would just see it most likely just sort of spinning freely both left and right, with the airship not really responding because of the cable having been broken back there. But who knows? The cable broke and maybe got yanked too far forward and then got itself wedged in something, or that control horn broke off and got wedged.
Just an oddball question. Would a dirigible like that have a detent position? Like, would it go to neutral? If you let go of it, would the tendency be for it to, flap straight?
I would expect that you would not have something like that built into the control system. But if any kind of sort of aerodynamic vehicle like this is sort of dynamically stable, then just the airflow over the control surfaces, if you let it go, the control surfaces would go to neutral, and so I'm talking about the rudder and the elevator would tend to go to a neutral position just by the force of the wind going over them, and then that in turn would then sort of bring the wheel, back to neutral. Now, I haven't gotten a good look here. If I'm correct, there is a separate sort of side wheel for up and down, and I don't know if that's.
We'll see that. We'll see that in a later minute.
Okay.
I remember seeing that. But
excellent.
One last thing as we're finishing up this minute is Neville is in charge of this whole operation. I can't figure out, like, he's telling the agent halte fresse, which is shut your mouth. And
right.
The captain seems to be taking all of his orders from Sinclair. So I don't know how high up he is. In Stratego, he's not a spy. Doesn't have that much. But
right.
I don't know.
Well, but this is Stratego for keeps, Jim. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I've wondered that myself, but I think part of it is, number one, it's, just a bit of just proper license taken where needed to keep the story moving ahead. But I also get the sense, and we've seen this before. We've seen Sinclair get sort of beaten down a little bit and then step back up. And in a situation like this, I would, at the risk of playing sort of armchair psychologist, I would say, especially in a hierarchy as rigid as that as we would see in Germany at this time, when somebody steps up and you don't know if he's in charge, but he acts like he's in charge, you err on the side of just listening to him doing what he says. Now, the Gestapo guy, of course, is struggling with this the most, but the Zeppelin captain says, well, he's got the swastika lapel pin. He certainly seems like he knows what he's doing. He's the number 3 box office star in America.
Yes. Who am I to argue with the laughing bandit?
Yeah, exactly. So I would venture to guess that even if he's not officially in charge, that he's taking charge, and most people are going to respond. So that Gestapo agent, as you said, ich habe meine Stelle, I have my rank. That's not enough for old Heinrich Potter with his little round glasses there.
It looks like the players have all set themselves, and now we're going to get into some conflict. But we'll hang on to that for tomorrow. With an old friend is going to be stopping by, or actually an old friend of yours, a new friend of mine.
That's right.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Zeppelins and lording and getting lorded over by being who's piloted.
Yes, exactly. Yes, tomorrow's episode, 66% of the hosts will have had experience flying a Zeppelin, and we can't promise that we
My
won't
day
try.
will come.
Yes, we can't promise that we won't try to make you feel bad about that, Jim.
Yes.
But
we'll see.
No offense. It's all said with affection among friends.
Yes, we'll check back as we're going to finish up the week here on the Rocketeer Minute. Please join us on social media. You will know all the places: Twitter, Rocketeer Minute. Facebook, facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute, the big site, rocketeerminute.com, and of course, sign up for us on iTunes and Google Play. Just find us. You're computer literate. I know you can find us. But join us here tomorrow as we talk more Zeppelins on the Rocketeer Minute. Until next time, over and out.